Hi, guys. Welcome back to Reciprocity Radio, episode 2 of our ABCs of Sustainability series. And we're your hosts, Cassie and Maya. If you're just joining us, welcome. I just wanted to share a quick thank you to anyone and everyone that is tuning in with us already. It means the absolute world that you're on this journey with us. Thank you for listening and caring, as Maya always says. And we're back today with the next letter of the alphabet, B, for biodiversity.
Biodiversity is one of those words that just comes up in conversations with climate change, conservation, and environmental protection. But biodiversity is so much more than just a scientific term. It's something that we experience every day, whether we realize it or not. So let's jump into what biodiversity is, how it shows up in our lives, how we're connected to it, and why it matters for creating a sustainable future or a future worth caring about. Biodiversity means the variety of life on Earth. The term combines the words biological and diversity to refer to the incredible range of living organisms that share our planet. Scientists generally describe biodiversity at three levels. First, we have genetic diversity, which refers to the differences within a species. These genetic differences help populations adapt to changing conditions. So, for example, the different varieties of apples like Honeycrisp and Granny Smith and all those yummy things, they all belong to the same species, but they each have different traits. Second, we have species diversity, which refers to the variety of plants and animals and fungi and microorganisms in a given place. So, a coral reef contains fish, corals, sea turtles, algae, and countless other microbes that are all living together. And then third, we have ecosystem diversity, which includes the many different habitats and ecological communities that support life, from forests to wetlands to deserts and grasslands and oceans. A good example is that within a single region, you can have coastal wetlands, sandy beaches, and nearby urban parks, each with completely different living conditions and species. According to the United Nations Convention of Biological Diversity, biodiversity encompasses variability among all living organisms and the ecological complexes in which they're a part of. So basically, it's a web of life. Every organism plays such an important role in maintaining healthy ecosystems. Pollinators help plants reproduce, microorganisms recycle nutrients in soils, predators help maintain balance within food webs, plants absorb carbon dioxide and help regulate the climate. So, when biodiversity is up and thriving, ecosystems tend to be more resilient, which is a word that we have been saying a lot here on the pod. And they're better able to recover from disturbances such as droughts and floods, disease outbreaks, and changing temperatures. All things that we are all currently dealing with right now on our planet. Biodiversity isn't just about protecting some rare species, it's truly about maintaining the reciprocal relationships that make life possible. It's really easy to think of biodiversity as something out there, quote unquote, in distant forests or national parks, but biodiversity is deeply personal if you really think about it. Every meal we eat depends on biodiversity. The air we breathe depends on biodiversity. The medicines we use tend to originate from compounds found in plants and animals, fungi, and microorganisms. Even our cultural traditions, stories, and identities are connected to the local landscapes and species. Think about your morning coffee, a strawberry, an almond, or even a chocolate. Many of these foods depend on bees, butterflies, birds, bats, and other pollinators. So this is a whole thing. When we say save the bees, this is why. Because when pollinator diversity declines, food production becomes more vulnerable, which means we as societies become more vulnerable. Many indigenous knowledge systems have long emphasized this understanding that humans are a part of nature. We're not separate from it.
I just wanted to echo what you just said, Maya, because that is so important to see ourselves not as separate from any of what we're about to dive into or what you just explained. Our breath is exchanged with trees, our health, our joys, our very existence and survival is all woven into the health of our soil and the web of life that surrounds us. So, thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront, Maya, because it is extremely important to remember that biodiversity is remembering ourselves not as conquerors of nature, but instead as participants.
We are participants, 1000%.
Maya, do you want to clue us in on what you're thinking about and how that relates to biodiversity?
I would love to.
So obviously we tend to hang out in the mountains because we're both mountain based. Even though you're in Los Angeles, there's mountains around you, and Maya, you're from Colorado, so it's natural for us to always be discussing about our mountain life, but the oceans are so full of biodiversity. And I would love to dive into the story that you have about our interactions with the coastal waters and the diversity that lives there.
Yeah, so when I went on my sustainability delegation to Copenhagen, Denmark, and Malmo, Sweden, when we were in Malmo, I saw something really cool happen with the biodiversity, the marine biodiversity there. We learned about the recovery of eelgrass along the city's waterfront in the Øresund Strait. Sorry if I said that wrong, but we had this conversation while we were just looking over the South Dock Basin in Malmo's Inner Harbor about eelgrass restoration. And it's cool because we even saw like the eelgrass restoration programs happening in real time and school children learning about the eelgrass. And so, why do people care? Why do the people of Malmo care about the eelgrass? Eelgrass may not look particularly impressive at first glance. You know, it's an underwater flowering plant that grows in shallow coastal waters, but it plays such a vital role in marine ecosystems, acting as a habitat for fish and shellfish, stabilizing sediments, protecting shorelines from erosion, and storing large amounts of carbon in what scientists call blue carbon ecosystems, which are basically marine and coastal environments that store all this carbon. Historically, eelgrass beds were widespread across Scandinavian coastal waters, but throughout the 20th century, they began to decline, including the waters around Malmo. The main cause was, let me see, can you guess it? Yep, you guessed it. Human activity, human driven change in water quality. So, as the city and the surrounding region, including countries like Denmark, expanded, so did their agricultural runoff, their wastewater discharge, and industrial pollution, which introduced these high level of nutrients, especially nitrogen and phosphorus, into coastal water. This led to eutrophication, and this is a process where excess nutrients fuel these large algae blooms. And if you ever have looked at a pond with or water bodies of water with algae, you can probably guess that no sunlight is penetrating through that. Mm-mm-mm. But the thing is, eelgrass depends on sunlight reaching the seed bed so that they can photosynthesize. And so that reduced light availability became one of the biggest barriers to eelgrass's survival. In addition, physical disturbance from coastal development and boating activity damaged shallow habitats, which made it even harder for the eelgrass to reestablish naturally. So, For decades, these combined pressures called eelgrass meadows to retreat into shallower and more fragmented patches, reducing habitat for marine life and weakening the resilience of the coastal ecosystem. Don't worry, this is a hopeful story. Over the past few years, that trend has begun to reverse. Let's give some snaps to Malmo and surrounding regions like Denmark. They invested heavily in improving wastewater treatment systems and reducing nutrient pollution flowing into the Øresund. Simultaneously, environmental regulations across Sweden and Denmark helped lower nutrient loads entering the sea. So the eelgrass decline reflected this widespread cross border nutrient pollution across the Baltic and Øresund region. So that meant that it needed coordinated action from Sweden and Denmark to reverse it. I think this is important to note that it's not just your country, it's not just you, it's not just your state or your city. What happens in your ecosystem can affect another ecosystem. That's why collective action is so important in this work and in this field. As water quality gradually improved, something began to happen, and I'm sure you can guess it. It's that light was returning to the seafloor. With clearer water, conditions became suitable again for the eelgrass to grow deeper than it had been able to for decades. And scientists and restoration teams also support this recovery by actively replanting eelgrass in suitable areas as well. This includes transplanting healthy shoots and using seed based restoration techniques to help reestablish meadows where they once disappeared. So I just want to note again that these were combined efforts. There was not one solution that fixed all. It was a whole bunch of solutions that helped the eelgrass to come back to life. And fast forward to today, the eelgrass in Malmo coastal region has been observed growing at greater depths than previous decades. So it's just getting better and better and better. And I think this story serves as such a powerful antidote because biodiversity is not just something we can lose. Of course, we can lose our biodiversity, but we can also restore it. And we have that power. So, biodiversity is not static, it responds to our actions. And positive change is possible when people commit to caring for the systems that sustain life.
Thanks, Maya. I had no idea about blue carbon really until you brought up eelgrass like a couple weeks ago. So we learned about ecosystem services. I'm not sure if you did, Maya, in your master's program, but there are different services that different species can provide, and we call those ecosystem services. It's a nature based solution. And so, eelgrass specifically can help with carbon sequestration within our oceans, which is so badass. It's no secret that carbon is detrimental to our equation within our climate. I found out that New Jersey is also trying to restore grass, which is my home state, and it's been suffering for a long time, but restored populations have showed increase in genetic diversity over populations with improved breeding and so forth, which helps in restoring our beautiful waters, as well as be a little bit more resilient to the climate stress that is inevitably happening within our oceans. I love that you were able to be there in person as well, and there's no better experience than firsthand, and it really leaves an impact on you. And I think that's why I wanted to share about the beautiful Klamath River as well. It's a river that's been restored to its original keepers, which is such a powerful thing with Indigenous communities around the world, giving them the space to work with the land that they have known for eons, seemingly. They're going to know best on how to show up and protect these beautiful spaces. The Klamath River is really a story of healing, a wound that's been really prevalent for like a century. Just to give you a little bit of background of where we're talking about if you don't know about it, the Klamath River Basin spans 12,000 square miles across California and Oregon. And for a millennia, it was the lifeblood of many tribes in this region, such as the Yurok, Karuk, and Klamath tribes. I am sure I'm missing others, but just as an example, if anyone wants to look deeper into these tribes and their relationship with this river. Before the dams were put in place, this river hosted the third largest salmon run in the United States. That's over 1 million fish returning each year. So this salmon wasn't just food. They were the culture, the ceremony, the way that they experience kinship with their environment and others. The salmon were called the culture carriers in this region. And then sadly came the dams, right? And so between 1918 and 1962, four hydroelectric dams absolutely choked the river, cutting off nearly 400 miles of salmon habitat. The salmon populations then took a huge decrease and plummeted from over 1 million to just 30,000. So, for decades, these tribes fought legally by protests through ruthless advocacy for their land and its creatures, and them included. In 2002, I believe, a horrific fish kill left 34,000 Chinook salmon dead in one single event. This incident really was the catalyst for having the dams torn down. Everyone in this region saw just how horrific these dams were treating the wildlife and biodiversity and the resources, the precious resources that this life giving river had provided forever. And so in October 2024, the last of the four dams was removed, praise be. The largest dam removal project in the United States history occurred. And so the river is now flowing freely from Oregon to the Pacific for the first time in over a century. The response has been just breathtaking. I was visiting my best friend who lives in Humboldt County, really close to where the Klamath River reaches the ocean. And we went, and it was a cloudy day, but it was just so enveloping. You could just feel such peace and tranquility and life-giving energy that this space really, really holds. And I'm so grateful that I was able to witness it because that was just a tiny fraction of the connection that the people in these tribes really had to the river. And I know that other people, experience as well. I also saw a video before I had even like been there in person of these indigenous youth that actually canoed through or kayaked through the river all the way out to the ocean and were just exploding with emotions and belonging to this place that had been cut off from them and their connection to nature for so long. If you give these beautiful environments the chance to heal and just be, it really does wonders for our planetary experience.
These stories need to be put on these platforms to show the good of like taking truly holistic approaches. The Klamath River is just like a really good example of how, climate and energy solutions can have these trade-offs as well. Hydropower dams, in theory, they're great. They provide renewable electricity and they reduce reliance on fossil fuels, but they do have significant impacts on ecosystems and biodiversity. Like you said, in the Klamath, the dams truly disrupted everything. Although there are these hydropower benefits in the renewable energy sector,
At what cost,
at
right?
what cost?
We
Like,
have to ask, we
yeah.
need to know, and we have to assess it all to see if it's viable.
Like this case truly shows that like not all climate solutions are automatically environmentally and socially beneficial.
There's so many moving parts and layers and beings that are affected. And, for example, going back to, again, these hydroelectric dams, it severed a vital lifeline for the ecosystem and all of the life that fed off of this river. There's so many animals and plants that relied on this. And so then not only did life return like really quickly too. I think it was within 2 weeks that when the last dam was removed, that these salmon were observed as being spotted for the first time. And I'm sure it was the coolest experience to witness that, both from biologists and the tribe leaders as well. I'm sure it was just such a nod to, hey, we thought this was the way and it wasn't. Let's try that again. Let's restore this space and see what else can happen. And with this restoration effort, I believe that there was like around over 2,000 acres of former reservoir land with 100 plus native plant species that were revitalized and replanted in these spaces. And I'm sure that we're going to see an absolute boom in the life and abundance that this ecosystem once held, and it wants to come back into action. And we are, as a world, we're facing this interconnected crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss. The most resilient solutions are those that mimic nature, nature based solutions that work with nature, not against it, not in spite of it, but because of it. All of these species that we're losing right before our very eyes, not to say that they can all come back, but why not give it a chance? Why not invest in it? It's the most profound investment we can make, but it's not just for the planet, it's for us. These stories that we shared today on biodiversity are proof that it's not a luxury to have biodiversity. It is life itself. It is justice when we have biodiversity. And it can happen in the most unlikely places, even places that have been stripped of it, like the Klamath River.
I think that is a beautiful sentiment. I think we've done a good job of like connecting it back to sustainability. But, our scientists and environmental organizations, governmental and non-governmental, have repeatedly emphasized that, biodiversity underpins human well-being, economic systems, food security, and climate resilience. Biodiversity provides what Cassie was talking about earlier, which are these ecosystem services like pollination of crops, water purification, soil formation, nutrient cycling, carbon storage, flood regulation, disease regulation, and many other benefits that go unnoticed until they're lost, and we must then restore. So, when biodiversity declines, ecosystems become more vulnerable. A loss of species weakens our food webs, reduces ecosystem resilience, and makes communities way more susceptible to environmental disruptions, which leads to other societal problems like migration. And I just want to touch on this really quickly. When you can't live off of your own land, you will migrate to another place. And so we're having all of these quote unquote immigrant. I mean, I don't have any issues with immigration. I think that we should all just be going where we want to go. Some populations are literally being forced out of their homes because they can no longer live off of their land, because they've lost all of their biodiversity, because climate change has made it too hot to live there. And so we need to think about how biodiversity loss can affect us in the long term. And that is, we're going to have to keep moving around. And we can even point to a historical case, the Mayan civilization, one of the best civilizations to have ever existed, but they went extinct. The Mayans died off. And why was that? It's because they were living unsustainably. they ended up cutting down a lot of their trees in their surrounding areas. They used the timber for infrastructure. And then all of a sudden, their surrounding trees were gone and their droughts became longer and longer. And they blamed it on the
Hmm.
gods, but really, they should have blamed
Sounds
themselves.
sounds way too similar to our conditions and the way that we've been living life unsustainably here.
Oh, totally. The Mayan civilization provides a perfect case study on how unsustainable practices does lead to migration, famine, and a lot of other societal issues that ultimately are civilization's demise.
I think it was Paul Harvey in 78. He was a radio broadcaster from the United States. Said, despite all of our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. And we forget that. Like, entire civilizations have gone extinct due to fucking around. Sorry, excuse my French. Due to not tending to our soil appropriately and just utilizing it as if it was never going to run out of nutrients and life-giving force.
And I think this also shows how like deeply connected climate change and biodiversity are as well. You know, healthy ecosystems help absorb the carbon in the air and buffer those impacts of climate change. But at the same time, climate change places a lot of pressure on species and ecosystems around the world. So when you're protecting biodiversity, you're therefore supporting climate action, and climate action helps protect biodiversity. Like, you guys, I promise you, it's a loop. It is a loop that we just cannot ignore any longer. From our stories today, you know, it's not about just protecting a single species. That's not the ultimate goal. It's not like just save the bees, save the turtles, you know, great, like we should be. But the goal is so much bigger than just protecting a single species. The goal is to restore the entire ecosystem and the benefits that it provides and just greater resilience for future generations. And that is what sustainability is prepping for future generations to be able to live. Biodiversity just reminds us that sustainability is way more about resources. It's about relationships that, like we've been saying. And the more that we understand those relationships, the better equipped we are to care for them and therefore care for ourselves. I also want to say again, biodiversity isn't just about the plants and the animals, it's about us too. Diversify your groups. Go somewhere new this
Mhm.
week. Diversify your communities. Check out what other places are doing. So when you do come to your own climate action plan or your own idea that you want to fight and advocate for, you're bringing in a holistic approach.
You don't know what you don't know. And so seek out things and people and places that are different than you. You never know what parts of yourself could come alive or be reconnected. Biodiversity is so powerful, and that's where strength comes from. The more diverse, the more resilient a space and a people can be. Before we formally close out, Maya, you can go ahead and wrap us up. I just wanted to subtle but not so subtle plug EcoPause. ECOPAZ. Those are my homies down in Guadalajara at the University of Guadalajara that are doing absolutely incredible things. Follow them, get a little insight on their efforts down there. They're working with a very small to me because I live out here in Colorado, but they're working with a smaller piece of land and just filling it with biodiversity between plants, animals, bugs, just life and themselves. They have created a beautiful group of diverse folks and stakeholders that are breathing life into a college campus right next to, from what I know, are polluted waters right there in the middle of their city. And they're still doing incredible things, working together, learning constantly from each other, and really restoring their relationship with nature down there, even on a small parcel of land in the middle of a city on a college campus. So please give them a follow.
As we wrap up today's conversation, I would like to leave you guys with a simple reflection as well. Like, think about what matters to you, a place that matters to you. Maybe it's a park, a beach, a hiking trail, a garden, or even a tree outside of your home. What forms of life share that space? What relationships make that possible? And what roles might you play in helping those relationships continue in the future? Biodiversity truly does teach us to strengthen our communities and our ecosystems to be more resilient. Strength comes from diversity. Different species, different roles, different ways of contributing to the larger whole. We thrive not because we are all the same, not because we are a monoculture, but because we bring different strengths, perspectives, and experiences into relationships with one another.
Remember, you are not a visitor to this world. You are of it. You belong, and so does everything else.
Hopefully, this conversation resonated with you. Again, we invite you to continue the discussion with our community and your communities. Share your stories and explore how biodiversity shows up in your own sustainability journey. Again, we are Maya and Cassie at Reciprocity Lab. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, keep cultivating the reciprocal relationships with the world around you, and thanks for caring. Reciprocity Lab is a sustainability collective that aims to connect one another through education, shared storytelling, and community outreach. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us on social media. The links are in our bio. Today's episode was co-created by Cassie Fetchick and Maya Morrissey, with editing done by Maya Morrissey. Artwork for that podcast is done by Zoe Coyle. Until next time, thanks for caring.